I'm going to teach you how you can set up your own Airbnb business without owning any property. Over the last 3 years, I've set up over 30 Airbnbs that generate anywhere between 12 to 16K profit per month. And in this video, I'm going to show you the exact 3-step process that I use to build this 6-figure property business inside of the UK, and the exact 3-step process that DJ and LJ used to go from no results with their previous mentor to then getting their first Airbnb and generating 10K inside of just 2 months. The process that Mo used to get his first property in just 4 weeks and now looking to go full-time in property. And Kaka, he went from no knowledge and experience to then 12K per month from his 6 Airbnbs. And others such as Greg, Pemi, Chimdi, Adam and Ahmad have all used to build their profitable Airbnb business. Now before I get into things, I just want to make a couple things super clear. This video is not for you if you think this is a get rich quick scheme. If you think you're gonna have a fancy lifestyle with private jets and yachts, I can't promise you that, but what I can promise you is that you can make more money than your 9 to 5 while working a lot less hours. This video is also not for you if you're not willing to put in the graft. See, Airbnb is a fairly straightforward and easy business model, but it still requires you time and effort. You need to contact landlords, there's going to be rejection, you need to put in sort of research. So if you're not willing to put in the time, then you can click off this video. And lastly, you need to be willing to invest in yourself. I'm not saying you need 50K to put in a deposit for a mortgage, but you need enough to be able to take on your first property and then stage it to make it look nice. So who is this video for? This video is for you if you're looking to build some extra income on the side, or you're looking to fully replace your 9 to 5 income to buy back some time. It's for you if you've got that hunger and desire in you to actually make a change. I promise you, if you follow everything step by step, you can literally change your life. You just need to be willing to take some action. And lastly, if you're willing to invest in yourself, you're going to need at least 3 to 5K to be able to take on your first property and get your business started. Now listen, I get it. You're probably watching this because you hate the sound of that alarm clock that goes off every morning. You're tired before your day even starts. You sit in traffic or you squeeze onto that crowded train in the morning just to go to the job that you don't really enjoy. You look at the same computer screen, talk to the same people and do the same tasks every day. And deep inside, you probably feel like you're made for more. You may even question, like, is this really what life's gonna be like for the next 10, 20, 30 years? You may have thought about quitting, but you've got bills to pay, responsibilities, family, and you just feel stuck. Well, this is exactly how I felt as well. Don't worry, a few years ago, I was literally getting up at 5 AM in the dark most days, getting to my office desk for 7 AM. I was literally eating my Weetabix and tapping my keyboard buttons at the same time in the morning, and then I'll get shouted at by my boss. I'm running errands for people at lunchtime, and I had this reality check where this just wasn't the life that I wanted to be living. But honestly, it's so achievable to make it out. You just gotta follow these 3 steps that I'm gonna lay out now in this video. So the first step is market research. You need an area that has good demand. So I'm gonna teach you exactly how you can find the best locations so that guests are always booking and these places are rarely empty. That way your Airbnb is always full, you're making money, and you never actually have to worry about getting in bookings. Step 2 is then speaking and negotiating with landlords. A lot of people go wrong at this stage. They end up having to speak to hundreds and hundreds of landlords just trying to get that one yes. But I'm gonna teach you exactly what to say to get them on board with your Airbnb and even negotiate favorable terms like paying no deposit. And lastly, I'm gonna show you how to get your property live in just 48 hours. I'm gonna show you exactly how you can stage things to get things done quickly so you don't lose out on time, money, and you can start getting in bookings fast. No guesswork, no fuss, just a simple system to start making money within a couple of days. Yes guys, so this is it. The 3-step process you're gonna use to launch your Airbnb business in under 90 days. And like I said before, it's the exact process I've used to scale to a 6-figure portfolio now without owning a single property. So let's just dive straight into it. So step 1, like I said earlier, is all about location. So you wanna find a location where guests are pretty much begging to book. You don't want to be begging for bookings. You want guests to naturally come to you and bookings to be flowing in. And the way you do that is by first establishing an area with good guest demographics. So you may be looking at that like, what the hell does that mean? So a guest demographic is a different type of guest. So for example, you may have a family who are sort of on summer holidays and they're basically booked a place to stay during the summer. So that would be one type of guest. So like a holiday maker or a tourist. Another type of guest may be someone who's traveling for work. They may have a work project for a couple of months and they need to stay away from home and they'll book an Airbnb. A third type of guest may be someone who's had an absolute madness in the kitchen, they've set it on fire and now they can't live in their home, so they need somewhere emergency to stay while their home gets fixed. So those are basically like just 3 quick different guest demographics. There are quite a few more. But essentially, we want to be in a position where we're going to appeal to as many of these guest demographics as possible. So if you were next to a beach, for example, that could be a great location for the summer. Obviously, people are traveling, kids are off school, they go to the beach. However, after September, when the kids go back to school, what are you going to do in that period? People don't necessarily go to the beach in the winter. So that may not be the best location because you need demand throughout the whole 12 months of the year. you're going to be responsible for paying the rent whole year round. So you need good demand. You can't just have somewhere that's going to be very seasonal in the summer. So that's important. That's the first thing, looking at your guest demographics. The next thing is establishing an area that not we think works, an area that we know that works. And the way in which we can do that is, which I've written here, is using data. So what does that mean? So data is essentially just looking at the market to see what the occupancy is and the average daily rate. So occupancy is the number of nights that are booked in a month as a percentage. So if you were booked 50 days in a month, 50% in a month, that's like 15 days. And your average daily rate is how much sort of properties in that particular area will sell for on a night-by-night basis. And what we can use is actually softwares to help us. And one's called Property Market Intel. And I'll show you the quick examples. If I just type in a random postcode, I'm in Southwest London now, so I'll put in SW6, for example. 6 RE, I'll just click this. Say if we had a 2-bedroom, 2-bath that could sleep 4 guests. I'll click search. And what this will do is now analyze the market to then work out what the occupancy is and also the average daily rate. So if I just give it a moment, it will load up and then we'll see what it kind of works out. Cool. So it's telling me that the average occupancy is about 73%. So that means we can expect to be booked maybe around 22 days in a month, if my maths is correct. And the average daily rate means we can probably sell it for about £211 a night on average. So using these numbers, we can now kind of predict what this particular area would do if we were to get an Airbnb there. So that's one of the ways in which we can use data. What you can also do is simply go onto Airbnb and have a look for yourself. So this is now just doing a little bit more of a manual search of what we were looking at on PMI. So PMI will basically tell us all the listings that he analyzed. So it had a look at all these different listings. It looked at what their average occupancy is, their ADR, so your average daily rate, and that's how it calculated this figure. But we can obviously do this for ourselves. We can look at the market, which is massively important because, say for example, you wanted to set up a restaurant on a local high street. If you walked down that high street and looked at all the other restaurants and they were empty every night, it'd probably be a bad sign because, maybe people don't really want restaurants in that particular area. But if you walk down the high street and every restaurant is packed, it's booked every day, there's queues outside, then that's a good signal so that if you set up a good restaurant on that road as well, you'll most likely receive bookings too. So once we kind of know these factors, I have this thesis that oversaturation is a myth. Like when you go on holiday, for example, you stay at a hotel. Sometimes you may go out your hotel, go for a walk, and you'll notice that there's probably hotels literally all further down the road and all around the local town. But why is that? It's because there's demand. Like the short-term rental market, I think right now is worth about 125 billion. And I saw a stat recently that it's expected to be worth about 500 billion in the year like 2037. So you can't tell me that there's oversaturation because there's a few people that are looking to get into Airbnb nowadays. There's a huge demand for it. So there's no such thing as oversaturation. If anything, if there's a lot of Airbnbs in that area, it's a good thing because it means everyone's trying to fill the demand. And ultimately, as long as you market your property correctly, you make it look nice, you've got good pictures and stuff like that, then there'll be no reason why we won't be able to take just a small percentage of that demand, because that's all you need. You don't need all those bookings in that area. You just need enough to fill your calendar. A hotel has to fill out 50, 60 rooms in a hotel. We just got to book one. So it's very achievable once you kind of look at all these things, and then you can just establish what's going to be your gold mine area. So then next, moving on, this is negotiating with landlords in the right way. So this is massively important and what so many people get wrong. And it's a common misconception that you need to book time off work. I haven't got time to do the calls, because you don't need that much time. You just need to know exactly what to say. So then you're not wasting time on phone calls. You're getting a lot of rejections. You can just be a lot more efficient and streamlined with this process. So the way in which we pitch ourselves and you sell it to a landlord, and the same way you sell anything in life, is through pain points. So what does that mean? So as a landlord, there are two things that they want. The landlord wants their rent to be paid to them, and they also want their property to be well maintained and looked after. Because quite often, not these landlords, these properties are investments to them, and they just want their money and to know it's in good hands. So the easiest way for us to pitch our service and try and acquire this property is by simply offering a solution to that pain. And the way we do that is by offering a guaranteed rent. So to the landlord, no matter if the property's full or if it's empty, we're going to guarantee that rent no matter what. So the landlord has reassurance that they're always going to be bringing in that income that they're looking for. The second thing is that we handle all the minor maintenances at the property. So now, not only are we taking care of the place, but the landlord isn't going to get bothered by a tenant who's calling them at the night, telling them that the light bulb needs changing or something else, the radiator is not working. Like, we're going to handle all of this ourselves. So it's stress-free. It's a stress-free property management solution for that particular landlord, and they're getting their rent paid on time. Now, you may have questions like, oh, well, what do we do if a guest damages a property? Like, how can we assure the landlord? Well, quite simply, like I've written here, we take damage deposits from our guests. So every guest that stays in our property, will pay us like a security deposit. We'll hold on to that, and then we then refund it back to them at the end of their stay. So should anything be damaged or broken, we can simply take it out of the deposit, and then we can just charge them for it. But what you'll find is that once you do take deposits from people and also collect ID from them, so we know everyone who is inside that property, people look after the property a lot better. And that's how we can offer reassurance. So we offer reassurance to the landlord by telling them that we take deposits, we vet them, we collect IDs. So we know at all times who is inside the property. Then the last thing is no tenant rights. So what's this? So essentially, if you want to keep up with sort of local laws and like legislation, there's a new law that's going to be passed where it's going to become increasingly difficult for a landlord to get rid of a tenant. Tenants have got increasingly more rights. So if they weren't to pay rent, a landlord can't simply just kick them out. And it's a lengthy process to go to court. And it just means that landlords basically have less control over the asset as their property. And it's becoming increasingly more difficult and more risky for a landlord to own a property. So why is that? Where does that come in for us? So as we're a company, we take on these properties as a company let. That's how we operate these Airbnbs. And we don't get any of these tenant rights. So that's massively as a benefit and a positive for the landlord, because they know, cool, if these people don't pay rent to me, I can simply just serve them notice and they can get out of my property. With a normal tenant, you can't do that. You can't simply just tell them to leave after 1 month. It's a very lengthy process, like I said. So this is reassurance to the landlord that worst case, if things weren't to work out, they can simply get rid of us and get in someone new. So it's less risk by working with us as well. So as you can see, these three things alone, it becomes what I like to call a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer for the landlord. They'd almost be silly to not take this as a deal. So people say, well, how can I convince a landlord to give me their property? They're never going to say yes. Why wouldn't they? You're offering them all these three things. Why would they not go with you? So if it's the way in which you can articulate yourself and come across to them, and that's what really enables you to get deals. And I mean, you don't have to make 100 calls a day. A lot of gurus will tell you need to call 300, 100 people a day. That's just simply not true. A, who's got time for that? But B, it means that if you've really articulated all these pain points well and you're offering a solution, then you won't need to call that many. And then once you do sort of manage to get them on your side, you can then start negotiating things like zero deposit. So when you pay no deposit, quite often when you take on a property, you normally pay your first month's rent, which is obviously 4 weeks worth of rent. And then you also pay a deposit, which in general normally equals about 4 weeks worth of rent as well. So that money you simply pay to the landlord, but it's basically dead cash because the landlord's not technically meant to use it. It's meant to sit in a scheme, which you basically get back at the end of your tenancy, similar to like a deposit. So for us, it just means we've got dead money we can't use. So we normally say that to the landlord, look, as we're a business and we are able to provide you with all of these things that we spoke about earlier, guaranteed rent, your maintenance, no tenant rights, it doesn't make sense for us to pay a deposit. And what you can normally do is negotiate to not pay a deposit, so you only have to pay your first month's rent, and then that massively reduces your upfront cost. So that's one of the best ways to negotiate with landlords. Then now you've reduced your upfront costs, you can actually start putting that money into staging, which is step 3, which is now getting your property live within 48 hours. So this is massively important because time is money, especially in this industry, in this world, because an empty property equals you losing money. If you think about it like this, yeah, if your property costs you £2,000 a month with all your bills and total expenses, what you need to do is divide that number by 30 days. And then what that will tell you is how much each night is costing you as an expense. So that would be about £66. So every day your property is not booked, it's costing you £66. So it's so important that you avoid any void periods, meaning like a period where no one's in the property, so you can start getting a return on your investment. Obviously, this is a business. We're running this as an Airbnb. The goal is obviously to make a return. So we cannot afford for there to be any empty days, or we want to minimize that as much as possible. So the way in which we do that is by planning ahead. It's all about the planning process and budgeting. So one trick that we've used and what I use in my business is ordering to the property. All the furniture I will deliver to the property. I won't spend time driving to the shops, because you'll end up just wasting your days driving around to all the different furniture shops. Yeah, it can be fun, but before you know it, 3, 4, 5, 6 days have gone by, and that £66 that we spoke about earlier is now adding up to £300, £400, £500, and you're not bringing any money. So order everything to the property, and that way you can get everything set up quickly, so you can just spend your whole day there, and literally all it takes is 2 days, 48 hours, and you're fully set up and ready. Now, the other way in which you can avoid void periods, avoid void periods, bit of a tongue twister, is listing your property live before your property is actually ready. So what does that mean? So your listings is how you market your property. So that's on Airbnb, booking.com and stuff like that. What you want to do is put these listings up before your property is actually ready. So that way guests can start booking you ahead of time. So what I will often get for a lot of my new properties is, on that first day the property is fully ready and set up, we have guests that check in that same day. So that £66 of an empty property doesn't ever like cross my path, because I'm never in that situation. I've always got guests who check in the same day. And that way you can get your listings live, you're set up, you've got bookings, and you can literally start making money straight away. So that kind of breaks down in terms of the 3-step process that I use. Hopefully that makes it clear, but that is exactly, if you can really implement this, I'm telling you, you can get results. If you watch this and you're thinking, yeah, I want to do this, but I'd rather have someone guide me through it step by step, send me a message on Instagram, or even just DM me the word Airbnb. We can have a chat, we'll see where you're at. No pressure, no pitch. Let's have a little conversation and see if it makes sense. So yeah, reach out to me and then we can take it from there.